Miss Valentin Tretyakov, who was the Nezavisimaya Gazeta, independent newspaper back in the 90s under Yeltsin. So it's a very high-level international group. A former president was among the speakers, President Akayev of Uzbekistan. And I talked to any number of people from Kazakhstan and related places. There was a lady, a professor of sociology from the University of Cairo, and so forth. So the general theme of the Likhachev look at the papers is the world wants to be free of globalization. Globalization, as designed by James Baker III and people in the George H.W. Bush administration, has been an unmitigated disaster. And the problem now is to get out from under this without having World War III. The yearning, right? Practically everybody to end this lunatic system of globalization and, of course, speculation over financialization, derivatives, casino economy, finance oligarchs running everything all over the world. My contribution, I thought, is to say these questions, which you seem to be regarding as purely theoretical, are being solved and answered day by day in Donetsk, certainly first of all, by Riza in Greece, perhaps by this left bloc in Portugal, right, which we're going to talk about in a minute, the left forces there that want to roll back austerity, reflate the economy, restart production, employment, and so forth, and elsewhere, right? So there are all kinds of elements that are going on, but you got to learn to get out of globalization. Look at this front, which is now emerging, of different initiatives, right? And above all, the Donetsk, because they've taken it the farthest. They're not subject to the IMF. They have nationalized all the banks. So then the other thing I obviously wanted to argue was it is absurd to argue that the United States has some national interest, pardon me, in Ukraine. There is no such U.S. national interest in Ukraine. Rather, we have to open our eyes to the fact that the paramount U.S. national interest, the one that eclipses all the others, is good relations with Russia. This is the number one desideratum, not something to do with Poroshenko and his obscene policies there in Kiev, or this fascist banditry that seems to have taken over much of the state. We cannot go out on a limb for these people because we need good relations with Russia. And you can think, the pacification of the world, how would it look? The United States can most likely bring along France and Britain in the Security Council. Russia exerts tremendous political influence over China. So if you have a U.S.-Russian accord, you can essentially assemble the needed unanimity in the Security Council. And what would it be to solve Ukraine? Essentially, it's going to be a partition, no way around it, like West Virginia. You're going to have to solve the Middle East question. And then we come to this the thing that's been in the news lately, this very sensitive and thorny and complicated issue with China in the South China Sea. And I think there you'd have to rely on the good office of Russia to essentially cajole China into some kind of a negotiation where the Chinese demands in this part of the ocean could be largely fulfilled and respected, but then also the Japanese, Vietnamese, Philippine, Taiwanese, and Indonesian demands could also get some kind of a satisfaction. Then you're going to have a multilateral negotiation there, and that won't be easy. If the EU and Russia can agree some kind of a modus vivendi, a way of getting along, then there's a chance. But this is not an area for aggressive initiatives, and that goes for China as well as for the U.S. This is not something that's easy. It's not a clear-cut case, because indeed Japan and Vietnam and these other places do have a claim, and the Chinese are creating faits accompli, and that is not likely to be accepted. Though I will talk in the future about. I'll give you some African intelligence that I was able to pick up at this conference. Very high-level discussion. It was sponsored by the Russian Academy of Sciences. Academician Bogomolov, I guess, was the most famous from the Russian Academy side. The Foreign Ministry of the Russian Federation gets my thanks for allowing me to be there. And let's go on now to a mass strike, a general strike against Whirlpool in Italy. Back in a minute. This Radio, Webster Tarpley speaking this week from New York City. Now, friends of the program know that we have been agitating for the release, the freedom of Reverend Edward Pinkney of Michigan, who is now being held in the prisons of Snyder, Governor Snyder of Michigan, and that guy's even mentioned as a potential presidential candidate, if you can believe that. But we know the truth. He's an oppressor. He's a tool of Whirlpool Corporation, and Reverend Pinkney is guilty of multiple. He's the victim of multiple frame-ups by the Whirlpool forces, this awful company town of Benton Harbor, Michigan, and the local honcho mayor Hightower. And that was the whole point, was to get petitions and organize a recall of the very unpopular Hightower. And the idea that a couple dates would be written over and somehow blame Pinkney, it's just absurd. It's a complete frame-up. But now here's what we see. The sociopathic conduct of the Whirlpool Corporation is reaching around the world. And here's what we found. In Italy, a country that still has some kind of union movement, although not what it was, there is now a tense standoff between the metal workers' unions, and on the one hand, and the bosses of Whirlpool on the other. So let's take a look at Whirlpool in Italy to get an idea of what's going on. The total jobs, total workers for Whirlpool in Italy is about 6,000, and they're proposing to wipe out about 1/3 of those jobs. And that is, first of all, in Caserta, that is sort of between Rome and Naples, but closer to Naples. And Caserta is the place where you have a very large Italian palace, right, of the kings of Italy. And if you take the train, from Rome to Naples. When you look at it on the left at a certain point, you're going to see the royal palace. So in Caserta, they want to destroy 815 jobs. So this is such a shock to the community that we'd be closing an entire factory. So on the 22nd of May in Caserta, there was a general strike of all industrial plants. All factories were shut down for 8 hours. So one full day, not symbolic, but a real shutdown. That was on the 22nd of May. So they're trying to defend themselves against the closure of this plant. In Varese, now this is northwest of Milan, more or less, 200 jobs are going to be destroyed by Whirlpool. And there, we've another general strike, which has been called. The scope of this one is not so clear, but it's going to be on the 12th of June. The 12th of June, General Strike versus Whirlpool, and there will be a demonstration and parade in Varese. I probably should have added that in Caserta down south, they've got a 24-hour stakeout at the factory gates, right? So they're out there protesting 24/7. Then in Fabriano, 200 jobs are targeted. And near Turin, there is a testing and research facility of Whirlpool, which has, I think, about 150 workers, and about half of them are going to get the sack. So the total is more than 2,000. And this is extremely brutal. The labor minister and the minister of economic development called in the Whirlpool executives to protest what they had already announced, jobs destroyed. And then in the middle of that, the Whirlpool arrogant and impudent bosses, incompetent bosses said, and guess what? We've decided to add another 600 or so sackings, right, layoffs to this package. Now, it means that we have until the 12th of June to link up these struggles. This is what I would propose to do. Link up the struggle of the civil rights forces to pink across the United States and with these Italian unions who are fighting desperately to defend their livelihood. And you see the idea, right? Whirlpool embodies killer austerity, genocidal austerity, and they also embody a very authoritarian, oppressive, dictatorial political system that is designed to impose that and crush the opposition. Just for people in Europe who might want to get on the phone and start talking to local representatives, the unions involved are the Italian Metalworkers Union. So FIOM, F-I-O-M, that's the CGL, overall national union. The FIOM is taking part in this. The FIM, Federazione Italiana Metalmeccanici. That's the CISL. That's the Catholic Union. I should have mentioned the CGIL is the ex-communist socialist, now Democratic Party, I guess. So FIM of the Catholic Union, CISL, and then the WILM, UILM. The UIL is the Social Democratic one from left over from the 40s and 50s. So those three, right? And they've traditionally acted together, at least when conditions were right. So those Italian unions need to, it seems to me, include agitation. The fact world must come down. They're stealing property, privatizing it for gentrification, golf courses, and other projects with no merit. They're robbing it from the recreational needs of very poor minority people, black people, and others in Benton Harbor. And that therefore, not only Whirlpool destroyed jobs, but they're also racists and certainly reactionaries and probably worse than that. So we want to follow this very closely. Keep up to the United Front Against Austerity, and indeed the Tax Wall Street Party, Tarpley.net, my Twitter account, Webster G. Tarpley. We're going to follow this very, very closely, and we hope to get in touch with some of these unions so that they can broaden the political counterattack against Whirlpool. All right. Now, what we talked about at the beginning of the broadcast is this question of will forum discussing other other actions against globalization, right? We know we have Syriza in Greece. We're going to get a report from Athens in just a minute. In Spain, it's this Podemos, which is an authentic mass strike organization. However, we've got this extremely fishy, dubious Iglesias as the head of it, the guy who says that he has no proposal at all to demand a cut in the level of the Spanish debt. So New York City, we're here on the Friday, the 29th of May. So now we've talked about Syria.